Well, welcome everybody. I'm delighted that you're here. I'm even more delighted that I've been invited to chair this meeting, or this panel, which is going to be followed by a Q&A. It's obviously an illustrious panel, and I shall introduce them. But also, education and, what could we say, a classless society, right, is something that's very dear to my heart. I mean, I originally qualified as a teacher. I've worked in FE colleges as well. I've never worked in the private sector, but I've worked for a teaching trade union where we had members in the private sector, in public schools, as some people call them, and where I used to come back, this was some time ago, and write on a flip chart, so on the wall, how much it cost per term to go to a particular school, because it was mind-boggling. And I've never forgotten giving a particular representative a lift to the station, he was giving me a lift to the station, and he asked me about school trips. I thought, uh-oh, what's going on here? And I said, well, where's your school trip going to? And he said, well, every year we take students on water polo to Australia. Well, given about 15 years later, I've never been to Australia. You can imagine I was slightly, not exactly lost for words, but there we go. For those people who don't know me, I'm Pam Tatlow. I happen to chair Richmond Park Labour Party, but I've also been a long-time member of the Socialist Education Association, and more recently I've worked for Millions Plus, which is the Association of Modern Universities, and they're universities that have the most socially inclusive student profiles, and some of them, for example, have 98% students who are from state backgrounds, of which I never cease to tell people about. So I might say a bit more about the SEA at the end, because I'd like those of you who are interested in education to think about joining, but I'm going to talk about our panel as well. Jackie Schneider, who's to my left, your right, is our parliamentary candidate, prospective parliamentary candidate for Wimbledon. She's a primary school teacher who has been specialising in music, and Jackie's going to talk about testing on Ofsted, and those of you who followed stuff would be aware that the Labour Party has made some announcements. Was it Robert who was going next?
Yes.
It was Robert who's going next. Robert's a journalist who's written extensively in papers not only about education but also about extremism, and he's published more recently a book called Posh Boys: How English Public Schools Have Ruined Britain, or words to that effect. I want to know, Robert, what's happened to the posh girls as well, but you know, you can tell me about that as well in a minute. But I do appreciate that of our 20 prime ministers who've come from Eton, I think all of them are male by definition. And not our final speaker, but our third speaker is Alasdair Smith, who's National Secretary of the Academies Alliance, an extremely important organisation where the SEA and the Anti-Academies Alliance have got similar objectives. And I do recall, because Michael Gove said a lot of interesting things when he was Education Secretary of State, but I do recall him saying that free schools were being challenged by far left teachers from the Anti-Academies Alliance. Now my thing about that is fab, right? Because when I had to deal with Michael Gove and the wonderful Dominic Cummings, then who were, you know, a pretty good pair, they deregulated teaching professions from having to have professional qualifications, and they and the Lib Dems were full frontal and an austerity programme in terms of schools and the fragmentation of the school system that we've got now. So I hope that you agree with me. We've got a fantastic panel, and I've had my 5 minutes and probably a bit more, and you are going to have a chance after they've spoken to ask your questions, and they will give you some answers and be as challenging as you like. So thanks very much. Jackie is our first speaker. Super.